It started with a single glance, a fleeting moment when Emily caught her reflection in the dusty attic mirror and saw her own eyes blink a fraction too late. It wasn't the kind of thing you'd notice unless you were looking for it, but once she did, she couldn't unsee it. A spirit possesses people through their reflections. She'd read in an old book her grandmother left behind, and now, standing in the creaking attic of her new house, that warning felt less like folklore and more like a prophecy. The mirror was ancient, its frame carved with twisted vines that seemed to writhe if you stared too long. She'd only come up to clear out the junk left by the previous owners, but the air grew heavy, and the floorboards groaned beneath her feet as if warning her to leave. She told herself it was nothing, just an overactive imagination after a long day. But when the attic door slammed shut behind her, trapping her with the mirror, her pulse quickened. Emily's breath fogged in the dim light as she turned back to the glass. Her reflection stood there staring back, but something was wrong. Her lips weren't moving, yet the figure in the mirror smirked. She stumbled back, her foot catching on a broken board that snapped with a sharp crack, sending a shiver up her spine. "This isn't real," she whispered, but the words felt hollow. The reflection tilted its head, mimicking her movements a second too late, and then it raised a hand she hadn't moved. Panic clawed at her chest as she grabbed a dusty sheet to cover the mirror, but the fabric slipped from her fingers as if pushed away. The room grew colder and a faint whisper slithered through the air, her own voice but twisted, calling her name. She yanked at the attic door, but it wouldn't budge. The hinges rattled as if something on the other side was holding it shut. Turning back, she saw her reflection step closer to the glass, its edges blurring like smoke. It pressed a hand against the mirror from the inside, the surface rippling like water. Emily's scream caught in her throat as her own hand lifted against her will, reaching toward the glass. She fought it, muscles straining, but her fingers brushed the cold surface, and a jolt shot through her. The world tilted, and suddenly she was staring out from the mirror, watching her own body stumble back, eyes wide with terror. But they weren't her eyes anymore. They gleamed with a sickly yellow light. Her body, or whatever controlled it, grinned and turned toward the attic stairs. The door creaked open on its own, and Emily pounded silently against the glass, her fists making no sound. She was trapped, a prisoner in her own reflection, while the spirit wore her skin like a costume. Downstairs, she heard the floorboards creak as it moved through the house, humming a tune she'd never sung. Hours passed, or maybe days, until she saw it return with a kitchen knife, its blade glinting as it approached the mirror. "You're not needed anymore," it said in her voice, and the glass shattered inward, cutting her screams to silence. But the spirit wasn't done. It needed more. The next day, Emily's neighbor, Mark, came by to check on her. He found the house eerily quiet, the attic door ajar. Curiosity drew him up the stairs where the broken mirror lay in pieces. As he bent to inspect it, a shard caught his reflection, and his eyes blinked a fraction too late. Jake never should have stopped at the roadside diner that night, but the flickering neon sign promised coffee, and the storm outside left him no choice, until he saw the waitress's reflection in the rain-streaked window, smiling when her face stayed stone cold. He chalked it up to exhaustion, a trick of the light after hours of driving, but the unease lingered. A spirit possesses people through their reflections, his grandmother used to warn, her voice echoing in his mind as he sipped burnt coffee at the counter. The diner was nearly empty, save for the waitress, a cook muttering in the back, and an old jukebox playing a warped tune. The windows rattled in the wind, and the floor creaked as the waitress moved, her shadow stretching too long across the linoleum. Jake avoided looking at her directly, but the mirrors lining the walls made it impossible to escape her gaze, or his own. He finished his coffee and stood to leave when the door slammed shut with a bang, the lock clicking into place. The waitress turned, her reflection in the mirror behind the counter grinning, while her real face remained blank. "Storm's bad out there," she said, her voice flat, but the reflection's lips didn't move. Jake's stomach twisted as he backed toward the exit, his boots scuffing against a broken tile that cracked underfoot. He yanked at the door, but it held fast, and the lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the room. In the mirror, his own reflection shifted. His head tilted, his eyes narrowed, though he hadn't moved. "Sit down," the waitress said, but it wasn't her voice, it was his, echoing from the glass. He spun around, heart pounding, and saw her standing too close, her eyes locked on his. The mirror showed her reaching for him, though her real hand stayed still. He bolted for the bathroom, the only other door in sight, and barricaded himself inside. The single bulb buzzed overhead and a cracked mirror hung above the sink. He avoided it, splashing water on his face, but the sound of dripping turned into a low chuckle. His chuckle. Slowly he looked up. His reflection grinned, teeth too sharp, and leaned forward as if testing the glass. The bathroom door rattled violently, and the waitress's voice called his name, soft and sing-song. Jake pressed himself against the wall, but his reflection stepped out of the mirror, glass crunching under its boots. It was him, same clothes, same scar on his cheek, but its eyes burned with malice. "You can't run," it whispered, and Jake's body lurched forward, his limbs no longer his own. He clawed at his mind, trying to resist, but the spirit shoved him aside, locking him in a corner of his own skull. Through his own eyes, he watched helplessly as it opened the door, smiled at the waitress, and picked up a shard of broken glass from the floor. By morning, the diner was empty again. The storm passed. A trucker stopped in, found the coffee still warm, and sat down, until he noticed his reflection in the window blink a fraction too late. Lena thought she'd captured the perfect shot, a ghostly silhouette in the abandoned mansion's cracked mirror. But when she reviewed the photo later, her own face stared back from the glass, even though she'd been behind the camera. It was the kind of anomaly that thrilled her as a photographer, but the chill creeping up her spine told her this was no trick of light. A spirit possesses people through their reflections. She'd heard in whispered tales about the old estate, and now, alone in her dark room, that legend felt alive. The mansion had been a goldmine of eerie shots, peeling wallpaper, shattered windows, and that mirror in the upstairs hall, its surface cloudy but unbroken. She'd spent hours there, the floorboards creaking underfoot, the wind howling through broken panes. But when she'd snapped that photo, the air had turned icy, and a door upstairs slammed shut, echoing through the empty house. Back home, Lena pinned the developed photo to her wall, unable to shake the unease. Her face in the mirror looked wrong, her eyes too wide, her mouth curved in a faint, unnatural smile. She brushed it off as fatigue and turned to her bedroom mirror to tie her hair back. Her reflection moved a beat too slow, lingering when she stepped away. The room grew still, and a faint scratching sound came from the wooden floor, like broken boards shifting. She whipped around, but nothing was there except her reflection, now standing closer to the glass, watching her. Heart racing, she covered the mirror with a blanket, but the air thickened, pressing against her chest. The photo on the wall fluttered to the floor, and when she picked it up, her face in the image had changed. Her eyes were black voids, her smile wider. A low hum filled the room, and the bedroom door creaked shut on its own. She grabbed her camera, desperate to delete the digital file, but the screen flickered, showing her reflection in the mansion mirror. Moving, turning, stepping out. She dropped the camera, and it hit the floor with a thud, the lens cracking. Footsteps echoed behind her, slow and deliberate, though she was alone. In the covered mirror, muffled thumps sounded, like fists pounding from the other side. She tore the blanket away and saw herself, except it wasn't her. The reflection's skin was pale, its eyes sunken, and it pressed against the glass, distorting the surface. "Let me in," it rasped in her voice, and her hand twitched, reaching for the mirror against her will. She screamed, pulling back, but the spirit surged forward and her vision blurred. When it cleared, she was inside the glass, staring out at her own body as it picked up the camera and smiled. The next day, her roommate found the dark room trashed, photos scattered, and Lena gone, except for a new picture pinned to the wall, showing the roommate's reflection in the cracked mirror, blinking a fraction too late.